Welcome to Season 2 of the SOAR podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. Welcome to the SOAR podcast. On today's episode, we have our special guest, Taylor Tomanka. Taylor, tell our listeners what it is you do.
Well, thank you for having me on, first of all. I am a small business attorney, and I focus on creative female entrepreneurs and helping them legally protect and grow and build generational wealth through their small business.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so I help freelancers, I help small business owners, but again, I focus on those creative type
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
So how did you get into this? Because law, I feel like law is one of those list items that we were given in elementary school where it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You could be a fireman, you could be an astronaut, you could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor. And we typically don't think of lawyer or attorney as a kind of like freelancer entrepreneurial business, but clearly you're making that work. So how did you get here?
So I was a public relations major in college and, had really big, like, Carrie Bradshaw dreams of doing the
Yeah.
Sex and the City thing and being the PR publicist. And then I realized that I would not make the kind of money I thought they did. And senior year, randomly applied to law school, um, which was crazy in and of itself. I am the second person on my dad's side of the family to go to college at all. And I am the first person to get my master's in business administration, my MBA, and also my doctorate, my Juris
Mm,
Doctorate, my JD. So I come from a very different world than the traditional attorney.
sure.
I married someone that is a third and fourth generation attorney on both sides of his family.
Oh, wow. So
And
he's kind of
he,
legacy.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he had a little bit more like surplus excess
Mhm.
cash than I did growing up. I
Mhm.
grew up with everything that I needed. But it was a completely different world.
Yeah.
And even in law school, I started to very quickly realize that I was not like the typical traditional student.
Mhm.
I didn't know to do certain things year two all year to achieve certain clerkships and certain jobs by year three all year.
Mhm.
Just certain things that if you were a legacy, that you would have been told that information and you would
Sure.
have, no, you would have had that leg up, I guess. And I didn't have that. And my husband is a very like kind, humble man, but he just grew up so different than
Yeah.
I did. And coming into his family and just seeing the disparity of things really hit me. And then fast forward 8 years later, I've been an attorney for 8 years. The past 7 years, I've been a family law attorney. So
Mhm.
that is the whole gamut of um, divorce, adoption, child protective services, domestic violence, protective orders, the whole
Heavy, heavy
shebang.
stuff.
Heavy stuff. Um, and it just got to the point where I realized the system is not set up for women,
Mhm.
especially. It's not set up for poor people or from
Mhm.
even just middle income people.
Mhm.
It is set up for the rich and the wealthy to um, manipulate certain systems, honestly. And it just got to the point where I just couldn't see women and children, because children are the ones that the women have most of the time. I just couldn't see them put in these positions of being powerless.
Mhm.
Uh, and 2020 hit, the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, a lot of my clients started doing online side gigs, to
Mhm.
make ends meet because their job, cut their pay or hours or what have you. Um, you got to do what you got to do, and so I started thinking about these women and like how I could help them because I realized they didn't have a ton of income, but they still needed someone to give them like a very basic structure of how to operate their business so that
Mhm.
they can have a chance at being successful. I think the statistics are 20% of businesses don't make it after the first year,
Mhm.
small businesses. So it's incredibly important to have certain information. And coming from my background and seeing that there is real wealth disparity and class disparity in a lot of our societies in big cities still, um, I just felt like women needed someone to tell them this information because
Yeah.
it's not information that we're normally told in school. Women are not told how to run a business. We're not, unless you major in finance, you are not taught how to balance, a balance sheet. You're not taught to, contact the Texas Workforce Commission if you get staff. You're not taught how to do taxes. You're not taught how to set up an LLC. These are all very basic things that men can just make a phone call and have a friend set it up for them or
Mhm.
network or what have you. Or not, it doesn't even have to be men, it could just be someone wealthier than you. But there's just such a disparity. And small business owners make up, over 90% of the businesses in Texas.
Mhm.
So who is protecting them? Who is helping them? Because I know that they're scared, first of all, because lawyers are scary, right?
Right. Well, and the
And
law topic in general is it's scary and it's daunting and it's overwhelming. And you look at the legalese, even on some of these government websites where you Google how to set up an LLC, and then it's just like this wall of legalese, and it's like, holy shit, I don't understand any of this.
yeah.
It's
And
just
then
very
there's always the
daunting.
disclaimer that says,
Hmm.
this is not legal advice. Like, we're
Right.
going to tell you all of this stuff to do, but it's not legal advice. Don't
Right.
actually take our word for it, even though we're the government agency.
Yeah.
It's it's huge. So I started to see that specifically within the creative realm, there were single moms, there
Hmm.
were women working multiple jobs, they're working nights, they're working random times. They can't come to a law firm downtown in the middle of the day. Um, and even if they can, who's to say they can get childcare? So I thought, why not do legal services online? I
Hmm.
mean, not only does it broaden my market, I think, even my clients that are, maybe 20 miles away from me,
Hmm.
they more regularly choose to do things over Zoom than to come into the office.
Yeah, and
Um,
nowadays that's kind of become a comfort zone for people. I mean, it's like now since COVID, you can do everything online. I mean, I meet with my personal trainer over Zoom. You can meet with your friends for coffee, quote unquote, over Zoom. I mean,
yeah,
everything is over Zoom nowadays. And so when people are trying to jam as much as they can into their schedules because they are working a part-time or a full-time job and they have their side hustle on the side, they're trying to maximize every moment, then naturally they're going to one, go to Google, and then two, choose the person who provides the most convenient solution.
right. Absolutely. And other than the convenience, they want someone that also understands where they're coming from.
Right. Yep.
Um, and just speaks their own language, is more relatable. I can't tell you how many women walk into my office and say, "Wow, your office looks so nice. It's so relatable." I have specifically decorated my office in jewel tones. They're very calming
Mm.
tones. It's more. We have a house as our office, so it's decorated as a house. It's very
Yeah.
welcoming. It's not the strict, stringent, just scary
Mhm.
traditional law firm
Like
that you
that boardroom
see.
feeling. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want my
Yeah.
clients to feel comfortable
Yeah.
because it not only benefits them, the more information I can get out of them, the better. Because even if it's bad information, that just allows me to then build a case to protect them better.
Right.
Um,
So what do you help
there
your clients with nowadays? So you're not doing family law anymore. So in the entrepreneurial and creative world, what kinds of things do you help your clients with?
so I really, really emphasize building generational wealth
Okay.
because I have this family law background. And as well as doing family law, I also did estate planning and probate law. So I have dealt pretty extensively with real estate and family businesses specifically, doing a lot of trusts, a lot of business succession throughout the family, um, prenuptials,
Mhm.
postnuptials. In the state of Texas where I live, everything is community property. So if
Mhm.
you start your LLC while you're married, if you get a divorce, technically your spouse can claim 50% of it in the
Mm.
divorce.
Mhm.
And a lot of the time, if they're spiteful, which if you're getting a divorce, they're probably not going to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, that can bankrupt a small business.
Yeah.
It can completely wipe it out. So I specifically can, and I know that no one ever wants to, have these conversations, but
Mm.
sometimes we have to, just kind of boss up and realize that there are decisions we have to make that are business and not personal,
Yeah.
and we have to protect ourselves as women, just like a man would.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are human beings just like them, and um, it's better to be protected now when you're both happy and in love than later on down the road when one of you is really vengeful. Um, so I focus on also helping you hire your children and how you can
Mm.
get tax deductions and how you can start their college fund while also
Oh,
paying them.
wow.
So obviously, I do a lot of contracts as well, custom contracts for the creative realm. So aside from being a lawyer, I started a fashion blog for 2 years. And I know it sounds so silly to say,
It's
but
not. It's just, I just
I
love the
learned
smile that
so
comes over your
much.
face every time you say that. We were talking about this a little bit before recording, and you just kind of like light up and get a little silly when you talk about it, which I love. I think it's so cute.
Thanks. My brand is the extra blog. So it's very me to be very like out there and bright and colorful and just bold and in your face. So it's kind of my creative side to being a
Mhm.
lawyer. Working for myself, I don't have to wear just black and brown. I can wear
Right.
like you can't see, but I'm wearing a purple skirt right now. Um, and I just get to wear, still professional clothes, but I get to have fun with it. And it's
Yeah.
nice. And it makes me happy, and it makes me feel like I can take on the day and I can show up and be the boss that I am and feel confident about doing that.
Yeah.
Um and that's what I love about the creative side and the freelancing side, because it's such a breath of fresh air compared to, the I feel like sometimes it's really hard to breathe in a big law firm, or a medium
Yeah.
sized law firm even. Um, I mean, still statistically, women are not being promoted. And, a lot of that has to do with us wanting families and not being able to do it all because it's
Mhm.
literally impossible, especially
Yeah.
working at big law firms with those billable hours and those expectations. I mean, it's
Yeah,
impossible.
absolutely. Well, I love that you found a way to have that balance in your life between the super creative, fun, kind of artistic outlet, but then also the very like professional and, making sure that businesses and business owners have protection for whatever the future may bring. Now, I want to get into kind of some of the common mistakes that you see business owners making and some of your tips for legal protections for business owners. We are going to take a super short break and dive into that when we get back. Hey, Ray Hyde Cornell here. Look, the freelance lifestyle can be lonely, but you don't have to go it alone. And if you're like me, you don't need another friggin' Facebook group on an ad-filled, icky vibe platform. You just need focused, helpful resources and answers at your fingertips. That's why I created the free Chiron community in Slack. Get access to freelance gig listings, daily motivational prompts, Q&A channels, plus a direct line to me. Oh, and you can also promote your own stuff. Imagine that. All inside the free Chiron community in Slack. Download the app on your phone, tablet, laptop, or desktop and stay connected to the high vibe community that wants to see you soar. Get access at chironconsulting.us/Slack. We are back with Taylor Tomanka. So Taylor, talk to me about what are some of the most common mistakes, and these could be things like, protections that business owners haven't put in place, or actions that they're taking that are actually putting them at risk, or, what are some of the common mistakes that you see business owners in the creative world making?
Well, the number one thing I would say is that they think having a sole proprietorship or a DBA,
Mhm.
doing business as it's sometimes called an assumed name certificate, somehow protects them and insulates them from liability. And I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, why would you have this formal name? Why would you have to fill out the piece of paper and send it into the state? Why would you have to go through that process if it's not going to somehow protect you?
Yeah,
Um, right?
one would think
So
logically.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense that people think that they are protected, but unfortunately, there's no liability protection with a DBA or a sole
Mhm.
proprietorship whatsoever. So the biggest thing I see is them having one of those entities set up rather than an LLC from the very beginning.
Mhm.
Another mistake I see specifically within that realm is that business owners think that they have to reach a certain revenue goal or a certain achievement before they set up their LLC. They feel like
Mhm.
they have to be worthy
Mhm.
in some way, and that's really not what you should be thinking about. So in the state of Texas, it's $300 to file for an LLC,
Mhm.
an extra 25 if you want it expedited. And that fee from, all 50 states can range from $100 to $800. So
Mhm.
it can be quite a chunk of change. Um, but in Texas, is $300 worth a lawsuit? Absolutely not. At my law
Right.
firm, I bill $300 an hour. So for you to even walk in my door and have a conversation with me is $300. It's just when you compare, it's not even apples to oranges. It's apples to cucumbers. It's
Yeah.
completely different.
Yeah.
And when I say that, and I say, is this $300 worth you going bankrupt? Because all of your assets are personal; they're not insulated by your business. $300 isn't worth it. Even
Right.
$800 isn't worth it.
Right.
Um, and they just don't think about it that way
Mhm.
because, again, who would? You
Yeah.
wouldn't because you're not taught this.
Well, it's
Um,
also not one of those kind of like fun, sexy entrepreneurial things that we do. Like
no.
people are more willing to spend time building their websites because that's fun and creative. And it's like, oh, look, I'm official. I have a website. But they're less inclined to do the unsexy kind of administrative logistical things that nobody sees. They're behind the scenes and we don't quite understand them. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. We don't really know what we're doing. We're just trying to get this box checked off. But you gotta do it. I mean, you can't emphasize that enough. Forming that LLC protects you, your household, your family, everything, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, a client could get pissed off at you and come after you, or something could be unsuccessful and they decide to blame you. You have no idea what's going to happen. And that just gives you that peace of mind to put that barricade between you and your personal assets and your business assets.
Yes, absolutely. And that actually brings me to the third thing that I see people doing is that, a lot of the times they tell them the DBA sole proprietorship has no liability protection. They're like, great. And they switch to an LLC, but then they don't change their bank account.
Oh yeah, using the personal bank account, that's a big one. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about it, it's the LLC only protects what is housed within it. So if
Mhm.
your bank account is outside of it, it is not protected at all. It's fair game. So even though you have created this structure and this insulation, it doesn't matter. It's not even worth the $300 you paid to set it up because you're not setting up the business to operate and function
Mhm.
as a separate entity from your personal self.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say someone has gone through the process to set up that LLC. They've got their business checking account. They are receiving all of the money they receive from their clients or their services into that business account. They're paying themselves into their personal account from their business account. They're doing all of these things right.
Right.
Let's say they have that kind of foundation done. What are the next things that you see as either mistakes people make or missed opportunities or other areas where legal protections can really benefit a small business owner?
The next thing other than your structure and business entity is got to be your contract.
Mm,
Your client
yeah.
contract is the end all be all. It is almost more important, but not quite more important than your LLC structure itself. It governs every single action and obligation and role and consequence and move that you make
Mhm.
within the transaction with your client. And I see a lot of people grabbing terms off of Google
Yeah.
or, legal Zoom. And, there's so many different businesses popping up now saying that they can do this and that. And it's an automatic, template. It's just spits
You
it
just
out
fill
with
in the
just a few
blanks
simple
and
questions.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Mhm.
And like that $300 for the LLC, like, is that $100 you paid for LegalZoom? Is that document? Do you think that a $100 document is going to protect you from hundreds of thousands of dollars of liability? And it depends on your industry, but say you're an interior designer and you're bringing in construction crews. I mean, that's, so many personal injury claims can be within that from
Yeah.
so many different angles. The liability is endless
Mhm.
within the creative realm,
Yeah.
because it's so personal. It's not something where, a lot of the time you're just buying something a million miles away. A lot of the time you're, a wedding planner or
Mm.
you're an artist commissioning something for someone's living room. You're giving a piece of yourself. So you need to be protecting that. And I think a lot of creatives in general just feel, I don't want to say that they feel insecure. Maybe intimidated is the right term. They feel intimidated by the legality side of things.
Mhm.
And I totally understand that because it is incredibly intimidating. Even as an attorney, I, was not taught these things in business school or law school. I've learned these things over owning my own small business for the past 5 years
Yeah.
and doing things myself and also being an attorney for businesses. It's come with the whole, gamut and experience of things that have been able to kind of encapsulate everything that I'm trying to do. But it's a lot and it's intimidating. And a lot of attorneys are really mean and they talk
Mhm.
down to people, especially, male attorneys, male older attorneys to females.
Mhm.
I have a lot of female clients say that they just are so happy that, they have someone that is looking them in the eye and is like
Yeah.
smiling and not like, growling at them and just saying like,
Yeah.
oh, what are your problems? Um, it's nice to always come back to the fact that we're all human beings, and at the end of the day what I do is a public service.
Mhm.
I genuinely love helping women and I love helping them succeed and I genuinely feel joy from their successes. And I just I want to do something that's more relatable and accessible and authentic for creative women.
Yeah. And you mentioned things like, if you're an interior designer and you have construction crews coming in and things like that, but a lot of people run fully online businesses. They never have someone step under their roof. They never step under other people's roofs. What are some of the risks? And this will be my last question on kind of like the negative, scary side, but what are
Yeah.
some of the risks that someone who is maybe a freelance copywriter or a freelance graphic designer, are they at any risk within their business just by interacting with clients?
Yes. So, like in the physical retail world, you also have those challenges in the digital realm as well. Um, they are a lot different, but what they bring with them are So the terms of service of your website are essentially the contract terms that govern how people can use your website, how people can use your services, how
Mm,
people will receive refunds, how they will
mm,
pay you, the methods of payment, the amount of payment. Um, it also includes obligations of your services as
mm,
well. So that is incredibly important to put on there. I have had clients where their own clients have emailed them, which is crazy to me, emailed them mad about their terms of service because they didn't disclose something or other. And
mm.
I know that sounds so out there, but if there is a crazy Karen, there's a crazy Karen, like there's going to be someone out there, a
Yeah.
litigious Lucy, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're more and more litigious these days. And it's sad,
Unfortunately.
but you, yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we should be able to trust each other more, but the fact is that we can't. And
Right.
it's a sad truth, but protecting yourself is always better than being the one screwed by a litigious Lucy. Other
Yeah.
than the terms of service, you also need privacy policies.
Mm,
So that is what governs the data that you collect and store and how you use that information. So, depending on your state, if you live in California, there are specific state laws that apply to those privacy policies and what you can and can't do with people's data. If you are, say, you are a child psychologist, there are certain disclaimers and consents you have to receive from parents now because of COPA, the
mhm.
Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This last legislative session, they came out with new laws and they are cracking down. So um, I always tell people that there is no one that is going to sue you faster than an angry mom.
Yeah.
No one in the entire
Yeah.
world. You don't want to mess with COPA. If you do anything that relates to collecting any children's data, you have got to contact an attorney because they are cracking down on businesses.
Mm,
And they are finally creating laws and regulations that we probably should have had for years now. But
mhm.
the government moves very slowly. But they
Yeah.
are finally coming around to things. The FTC is finally coming around to charging people like Kim Kardashian with fraud. I know she just had to pay like $350,000 or whatever she had made off of that endorsement deal that she didn't disclose something properly. That is the Federal Trade Commission, and they
Mm,
govern things like your privacy policies and your terms and conditions because
mm.
those are the documents on your website that essentially tell the FTC that you are not committing fraud. You are giving
Yeah.
all your legal disclosures. You're telling people exactly what you need to say. You're being transparent and following the law, and they're coming down now, especially with the advent of influencer marketing
Mhm.
and the effect that it's having on the public. It's great for brands, but there's a lot of things that brands are not doing, and they're not protecting their influencers either. Their brand contracts are saying, don't, and I've personally seen this doing my own blog,
Mm.
don't include the hashtag ad or sponsorship or gift or whatever in
Uh-huh.
your post. That is illegal. You cannot not do that. So you need to have an attorney on your side and reviewing those contracts and making sure you're following the law. Because if someone comes down on that brand, then they may come down on you, especially
Yeah.
if you're an influencer, with 100,000, a million followers. You're influencing a lot of people. There was a fitness influencer a few months ago that was sued by the FTC because she was alluding to having specific certifications and specifications around anorexia and bulimia,
Mm.
and specifically helping women recover from those and having a healthy nutritional lifestyle. And she had absolutely no experience or no background, no education, no certification, absolutely nothing. And they essentially proved that she had physically harmed women by her advice and the things that she was telling
Wow.
them, and was actively not helping them recover and was sued by the FTC.
Wow.
So there are very real consequences that are all digital. We just don't. we don't think about it because you snap
Yeah.
an Instagram photo and it's everything's happy, hunky dory, but
Yeah.
someone's on the other side watching.
Well, and that reminds me of this. I shouldn't call it a scam. I don't think it was a scam. Maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe you probably know more about it than I do. But I was hearing for a long time about people who were being contacted by companies that were saying, hey, your website is not ADA compliant. So if someone who is blind, for instance, visits your website, and if they can't interact with anything on your site because it's all written text and visual images and they have that disability, you're going to get sued. And so people were being threatened. And I forget the mechanism of this kind of like, it just felt very bullying, but people were being told they had to fork over $1,000 to $10,000 in order to protect themselves from these ADA lawsuits. Do you know about that? And is that a thing that people should actually be worried about?
I don't have a lot of specific knowledge about that, but I do know there are a lot of people out there that try and take advantage of small businesses.
Hmm.
I've been sent mail from agencies that are claiming to be, some not the Department of Labor, but some little agency of the Labor Department that are trying to sell. Those big plastic posters that say OSHA laws on them, things like
Hmm.
that. And they're just trying to, promote their products.
Right.
But they're spinning it as if this is a government agency contacting you and this is something you are required to do is give me money. Um, so I know that those things are absolutely out there happening
Mhm.
all the time. And that's another thing that you can have your small business attorney review for you are legal documents or supposed legal documents. That's
Yeah.
something that we can at least always get on the phone with someone and verify. Are you who you say you are?
So, what are the things that give me like your top 3 to 5 tips for making sure that you are protected in terms of maybe your website, also your service agreements? I'm thinking about our service agreements, and I don't like for my contracts to be super crazy long. And so I'm like, man, I don't want to put this extra kind of content in there. And then maybe it's intimidating to my clients and they don't want to sign it. I want to have kind of like the bare bones, just like what I need and nothing that I don't. But I have things in there like, this is the scope of our work. This is the duration of our work. This is the billing practice. This is what I'm going to charge you if you're late on our fees. And then things like, of course, tax withholding, and ownership of the intellectual property, which basically for me,
Always.
it says as soon as my invoice is paid and the work is complete, it's yours. I'm giving it to my clients. Like, this is my way of saying this is yours as long as it's paid for. So beyond those things, what do people need to have in terms of these service agreement contracts and terms of use and privacy policies that you would say are the absolute must-haves?
Well, number one, I would say you always need to have a choice of law provision in there. So, what
Mhm.
that means is that, say, worst case scenario, you're sued. You're not having to travel all the way to New York City if you live in Amarillo, Texas.
Mhm.
You are making that other person come to you because you're
Mhm.
the writer of the contract and you get to say things like that. And if you just leave it to chance and leave it blank or vague or anything like that, then typically the venue is going to be wherever the action occurred. And
Mhm.
if the transaction is completely digital, then you may be thrown into federal court. You could
Mhm.
be going to their state. That's
They might
very expensive
choose,
travel costs.
yeah, and they might choose the venue that has state laws that is more beneficial to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Another thing is your intellectual property rights.
Mm.
So specifically for you as a podcaster, um, and you did this beautifully with your guest waiver.
Oh, thank you. I
You
was like, "Oh, yeah, I sent you a guest release form. I'm talking to a lawyer.
yes,
I hope my form was okay."
it was.
Great.
I do have a few things I'll talk to you about later, but it's a good form. But a lot of podcasters don't realize that audio, when you are talking, if you don't have it in writing, whoever is on that audio is the owner of that audio.
Mm,
So with you and me speaking right now, had we not signed that waiver, we would own this audio 50-50. And that's no
mm,
good for you as the
interesting.
podcast owner, right?
Right.
Especially if you want to put it on Apple, iTunes, sell it for $1. Or I don't, honestly, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I don't know what they go for, but make some sort of monetary commission off of that. You
Yeah.
need that person's authorization.
Mhm.
Another intellectual property piece that a lot of creatives don't think about, but that I have to remind them of when it comes time to trademark or copyright anything that, or I guess this would specifically be trademark, is their logo. If they have a social media or branding company do their
Mhm.
logo, they need to have a specific authorization from them, giving them the IP rights to that logo because
Mhm.
they are the ones that created it. And a lot of the time, I've had logos created for me. And a lot of people's contracts don't include those authorizations because, again, they don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so, it, but when it times come, when the time comes to trademark your logo, you do need to give that authorization over to the patent and trademark office as proof of owning that.
Mm.
If you say your business's name is Lucy's Lemon Lemonade, you also have to give consent as yourself that you are the person named in your business's name. If you
Mm.
name your business Betty and June after your both of your grandmothers, you have to actually submit a statement that says Betty and June were my grandmothers. They are deceased. They do not have rights to their name anymore. And
Interesting.
submit that with the trademark office in order to get
Wow.
a trademark on your logo. So there are a lot of different pieces to IP that are just very specific to the creative that you are and what you're trying to do with that.
Mhm.
You also need to have intellectual property terms and your terms and conditions.
Mhm.
Um, a big reason why is if someone does infringe upon your say copyright or trademark rights. Um, if they were given prior notice of, hey, I have this copyright or I have this trademark on XYZ, you were given prior notice, then when you get into court and if you win, you will get triple the damages for their willful negligence.
Oh my God. See,
Yeah.
and this is why people don't look at these things because they're scary. It's so scary. And it's so much easier to sit in your office, in your home, in your little home office and go, I am so small. Nobody's ever going to look at me. Nobody's ever going to come after me. The government doesn't even know I exist. I'm just such a small little person in this whole big world. I can just ignore this. This is just too scary. Nobody's ever going to take me seriously enough for me to worry about this. But the fact is, these things do happen. And if you happen to work with the wrong client, I mean, I've worked with some clients who I can think of one in particular. By the end of our working relationship, he was angry and oh my God, he was just a flat out dick. And I managed his aggressiveness as best as I could, but he could have come after me for who knows what. He could have invented a problem for me. And so you
Yeah,
never know,
absolutely.
even though that person came to me through a referral, you never know who is going to show up on your digital doorstep. So these tips are
Yeah.
so, so, so helpful. And clearly, there's way more to dig into. So if people want to check you out and learn more about what you do and possibly even ask you for some help, where can they check you out?
So they can always go to my website, taylortheattorney.com. Very easy. You can also schedule a free discovery call with me at calendly.com/Taylor the Attorney. And you can also find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest as Taylor the Attorney.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here today, Taylor.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.